There are in the Quran ayat. Well, first let me say this. If we wanted to generalize the Quran into segments of meanings, in which a preponderant interpretation of certain ayat overrides another understanding or interpretation of these ayat. The Quran has in it verses or ayat that speak about physical laws. Of course, the Quran is not a science book. Let's not go here to the extremes. Please don't misunderstand me. There are ayat in the Quran that orient our thinking in a scientific direction. So they deal with physical laws. There are other ayat in the Quran that deal, in their preponderant meaning, with social laws. And there are other ayat in the Quran that have been interpreted with an emphasis on fiqhi matters. If we wanted to take the number of ayat in the Quran that orient our thinking towards or into a scientific direction, how many times in the Quran do you read as-samawati wal-ard? Just these two words, as-samawati wal-ard. There are ayat in the Quran about al-ma'. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ الْمَاءَ الَّذِي تَشْرَبُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ أَنزَلْتُمُوهُ مِنَ الْمُزْنِ أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنزِلُونَ. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about the embryo and the fetus. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about conception. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about the wind and earthquakes and hurricanes and typhoons. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about the cosmos, the galaxies, the universe. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about the air or the surface of the earth. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about the human species and the species of the jinn. And you can take the translation and the tafsir of your choice, and I challenge you to try to come up with mufassirin. They do exist, but they're not around. You're not going to go to your masjid or your public library or to an Islamic publishing house or bookstore or wherever and find these tafsirs. So we simply don't have them available or readily available. Then we take a look at the ayat that more or less strictly deal with fiqhi issues such as wudu and salah and siyam and hajj and these types of matters. How many ayat in the Quran would you think have this component of meaning, in which the fuqaha and our early scholars, honorable scholars of Islam, deduced their school of thought? How many ayat would you think? I'm not surprised if no one even ever thought about this, simply because we don't think about the Quran. But if a person wanted to track these ayat in the Quran, he comes up with around 150 ayahs. But when you take a look at the Islamic bookstores and libraries, well, I don't want to exaggerate. I'm tempted to, but I don't want. I want to stay within my limits. The overwhelming majority of books that are written about the Quran approach it with a fiqhi mentality, with a fiqhi explanation. There's only 150 ayat in the Quran. Out of over 6,000 ayat, or 150 in all of these books about fiqh are all over the place. So that means something is wrong with us. It's all right. It's all right, brothers and sisters, to say something is wrong with us. I come across some individual Muslims here and there that at the end feel offended. How dare you say, well, yeah, I'm telling you why something is wrong with us. Why don't we have the ratio here? I'm just taking two components, thematic components in the Quran. The fiqhi ayat, let's call them, the 150 or so fiqhi ayat, and the 700 or 50 and so, let's call them scientific ayat. That's 1/5. 150, if my math is correct, is 1/5 of 750. But this is not the balance we see in the writings and the publications and the works and the books that are all around the place. And then what adds insult to injury is that when some Muslim thinkers, they want to elaborate on what we just called the scientific ayat of the Quran. I don't like that wording, but it delivers the meaning. The scientific ayat of the Quran, when some Muslim thinkers want to explain these meanings, and people begin to point to them, accusing them that you want to subject the Quran to science. No. They don't want to subject the Quran to, there may be one or two of them who have gone off the deep edge, but the general thrust is they don't want to subject the Quran to science. What they are trying to do is they're trying to understand the scientific information that is out there and see how much that explains the meaning of the particular ayah that they are talking about. And what's wrong with that? And there may be fluctuating meanings, and we should not begin to develop a hostility among ourselves because one mufassir had at a certain time, let's say 100 years ago, had a certain amount of scientific information available regarding, let's say, the moon, which is another, you'll find it in many ayat of the Quran, and the sun, which you will find in many ayat of the Quran. The scientific information pertaining to these two planets 100 years ago obviously is not what we have today. Today we have more information. With our Islamic mind, we can deduce the information that does not conflict with the meaning of the ayah, and therefore subject our scientific discoveries to our scriptural revelation. And this can be done in harmony. There's no conflict here, unless science is running wild. And on a particular subject, if science runs wild, we drop it. We don't want to deal with it. If we find that there is some type of scientific theory that conflicts with the meaning of the Quran, then we have nothing to do with it. We'll wait until the human mind develops further and brings this type of theory in line with the revealed meanings that come to us from Allah in the Holy Book.